Discover Help presents Stress-Free Living with Ray Samich and Mr. Stress-Free, Ratanjit S. Sandhi. This audio program is an unscripted and unrehearsed conversation between Ray and Ratanjit. It is shared with you in hope of adding value to your life. We encourage you to listen to this program in its entirety to receive the full impact of its message. Sit back, relax, open your heart, mind, and soul to this edition of Stress-Free Living.
I'd like to welcome you to Stress-Free Living. Thank you so much for being with us for today's program. I'm Ray Samich, and I'd like to introduce everybody to my longtime radio co-host and colleague and my dear friend and spiritual brother, Ratanjit Sandhi. Ratanjit, how are you this fine day?
Wonderful, Ray. How are you?
I am excellent. I'm always better when I'm with you, and I know you feel the same way. We just so much enjoy these times together.
Yeah, this is a wonderful time every week, and whenever you are available, you are very busy. So you are a gem, which is being only available to us on a very few weekends.
Well, as you well know, as everybody knows, all I do is ask the questions and try to understand. The wisdom and the knowledge and the great loving thoughts come from you. So, but it works well together. We've had so much enjoyment, and hopefully we've added a lot of value to people's lives. And we hope that we have reduced the stress in your life, because that truly is the purpose of the show. When we got together many years ago, we said, how can we make life better? And certainly reducing stress in people's lives. So let's take real world questions, real world situations, and talk about them. And we do it with all of you, however you may be watching or listening. We also do it with our group of Zoom guests. And these are people that have a link that can join us, and we interact with them before, during, and after the show. And we invite you to be a part of that too. If you'd like to, we'd be happy to share the link with you. Just contact us or go out to our YouTube channel, which is Stress-Free Living Radio. And the link is actually right there available for you on that site. Ratanjit, today's topic is a little bit off the wall. It's a little different than what we've been doing. Instead of just talking about one particular thought or case, it's a deeper thought. And it came to me after a couple of things happened this week that really kind of frustrated me. A couple of things with people that made me just wonder, why are they acting that way? Why are they making that choice? There's no logical reason to do it. There's no real humanitarian reason to have that attitude or that approach. So I said, I wonder if they would do that. I asked myself, I wonder if they would be that way if there was no tomorrow. What's driving them to act in a certain way? What drives us? What motivates us that we act in a certain way for certain power, monetary gain, success, ego, whatever it is, that if we knew there was no tomorrow, would we still act that way?
Actually, there isn't tomorrow, but there are many angles to go in this topic. Yeah. It's a very deep topics. And so if we don't make sense, please stay with us. Don't tune us out. And we will always welcome your feedback during the breaks. So if you consider today at the night, 11:59, that is still today. Mm-hmm. And then it is midnight, 12. It becomes today again. There is technically there is no tomorrow. And there is a wisdom which says, today you finish everything, because consider as today as your last day. And that is one way of thinking. And then also think that life never ends. Tomorrow is going to always come. So plan everything as if our life is unlimited. So when you plan for, there are several ways to plan. You plan based on your habits, which you inculcated when you were 6 years old, based on your fear, greed, and ego. If you plan everything based on those habits, you're planning for you, which is not going to be there tomorrow. And basically, there is another wisdom, that is, we live in the present. As a human being, we are alive when we are breathing. So we take one breath at a time. So that's all is assured. The breath I'm taking is all I'm assured. I'm not sure about the second breath. So not only we live as today is the last day, we actually should live as this is the last breath. And we should, in this breath, you can waste that by thinking, in terms of habituated by fear, greed, or ego, or you can utilize this present moment free of ego, fear, and greed.
This is it really is, and you said deep topic. We can call it deep. We can also say it's a really empowering topic. If you get this right, if you really understand this and figure this out for yourself, this is such an amazingly empowering thought and habit to get into to live your life. I don't know if younger people are able to really wrap their arms around this until you kind of go through a certain age and see all that happens. But if you're able to grasp this as a youngster, then, and you live every life as you live your entire life as if every breath was your last, then there's no question it'll affect how you live your life and how much you are empowered to be your absolute best at every moment of your life.
The real thing is that when somebody on the deathbed, you have only a few moments to live. At that time, you are not planning for how much money you can make, whether you can get a Nobel Prize, or you basically at that moment, you want to share your love and care for your loved one or people around you. You want to show them how much you love, how much you care, and the deep feeling, which is basically, instead of what is in it for me, it converted into what is in it for others at that moment. Isn't it true, Ray?
Absolutely. I think whatever the case might be, I fly a lot in airplanes, and even though I don't have a fear of flying, I must say that there's many times that I get into a plane and I just say, is something going to happen? Because that you're not in control when you're on that plane. And the first thought is then when that happens, it isn't of my own demise, it's my family. It's my loved ones. It's like the thought, will I see my wife and my kids and my grandchildren again? And that's the first thought. So if I even experience that going into an airplane, okay, or if I just avoided a traffic accident, somebody cut me off and I was able to avoid it. And the first thought of I would have missed my family. I would have not been able to be with them. I'm sure that that moment is very prevalent if you're on your deathbed. I mean, now you know it's not like could it happen or could it have happened, but it's going to happen. So your thoughts obviously go to something that is as sacred as your loved ones. My thought is, though, that is that enough? Okay. I mean, love, we all know love is the most important thing in our life. Our loved ones, our cherished family members are so essential to us. But if we just took that every last breath that we had, thinking that every breath is going to be our last, and if we just said, I'm just going to dedicate it to loving my family, I mean, obviously we have to do more with that last breath than that. That's not going to pay our bills of our life. That's not going to allow us to survive. Love is wonderful. It's phenomenal, but it's not going to keep us, not going to keep us fed and keep us clothed and keep us with a house over our heads. So how do we advance beyond that very basic instinct that says my family, my loved ones are important to me?
You know, just digressing this for a minute, supposing there is a scientist and he or she is on the verge of inventing a cure for very nasty, say, cancer.
Okay.
And this is so revolutionary, it can cure many other diseases. And he's or she is likely to get a Nobel Prize for that. So now suddenly she's met with an accident, and doctor says, we cannot save you, but he's still able to talk and think. And suddenly at that moment, the thought came to him or her that this is how you can cure the cancer. So he deciphered how to cure the cancer. Now, at that moment, when he's dying, is he going to share that, because after that secret will be with him. So when he shares that information with the doctor, is he thinking of Nobel Prize, or is she thinking of leaving a cure for all the patients who are suffering from the disease? So obviously, at that moment, she is more unselfish to share that information.
Right.
When if we knew today was my last day, first thing this will make me do is become unselfish. If I understood that thoroughly, if today was my last day and I had whatever wisdom, whatever secret, whatever things I could think of this with this brain, or with my education, with my experience, which I was holding on to myself to get a Nobel Prize or get an award, I would share that with the society so that it can help them. So it's not even the family, my wife or my children or my brother or my sister, which I'm caring at that moment. I would be more apt to share some information, some feelings, some task, which is going to benefit the entire society, right?
No, that's a great example. You're absolutely right. We would, and again, this happens once in a while. Once in a while, somebody is told by the doctor, get your affairs in order, you have a week to live. I mean, that, something like that is as devastating as that news would be to hear that. it also is very empowering because you're in control. What are you going to do for those 7 days? How are you going to live? And I would have to believe that if I were in that situation, I would divest myself of everything and take control of all my assets and make sure that everything is given away because I can't take it with me. But I would also, to your last point, anything that's in my brain, any wisdom that I think I want to impart upon anybody, try to dictate into a book everything that I know, everything that I've learned, including, as you said, any secrets that like these are a way that you can help people and make money and help your business or whatever it is. I would try to share all of that because once I'm gone, that information, if it's unshared, is gone. So your point is extremely valid that we lose the concern about what's in it for me with this knowledge. We want to, at that point, leave it all for everybody's benefit, for the benefit of others, not ours. You have taught me that, ironically, since you talk about ideas and creativity, you've taught me that I shouldn't hold those things within me anyway. You've always said that creativity that brings thoughts into your head, whether they're business ideas or whether they're stories to tell or poems to write or music to share, whatever it is, you've always told me that if those come to me, I have an obligation to put that out and not to hold it in, not to hide it or keep it for myself. And in so doing, more creativity will allow me to continue to have new thoughts and new ideas. And that, taking a little sidebar from our main conversation here, has always been very empowering to me. Don't keep anything a secret like that because it's meant to get out. You've always said we're just a conduit for these thoughts. We're a human conduit from divine inspiration, divine creativity, and we were chosen to share that. We have an obligation to do it, not to keep it for ourselves.
Yeah, whenever we come up with something amazing which can solve some problem for the society, there are two feelings come in us. Either we are proud that this has happened through me, and I'm boasting my findings to others, or I'm utterly grateful that this happened through me. And once we are in the mode of gratefulness, you become a conduit to more ideas coming to you. So when you are in the ego mode, in the pride mode, you basically have closed the door of coming the new ideas to you. You are hanging on to this idea, which is somehow came to you, and you want to cash on it, and you want to talk about it. But when you are grateful, these ideas you become a conduit to so many ideas, they coming to you and you begin to share. I think
what kind of proves that, and it's happened to me, and I'm embarrassed to even admit this, but when that idea comes to me about anything really valuable, and I know it's a good idea, I just say, wow, this is really an amazing idea. When I keep that within me and I don't share it and I don't even write it down because I don't want to put it in writing even, okay? I forget it every time. I forget it. And then I regret it. I come back and I say, what was that brilliant thought, that brilliant idea that I was going to share, I was going to act on, and it's gone. It's like, the divine is teaching me a lesson. You're a conduit. It's not your idea. It wasn't meant for you. It was meant to come through you and to share. And if you didn't do it, you don't deserve a second chance. It's like, I'm not going to send that creative idea to you again because I gave it to you once and you didn't do anything with it. Okay. So I really think that thought is like, okay, if it comes, you're supposed to share it. You're supposed to build on it, enhance it, give it to the world. And then, like you said, you open up the flow for many more thoughts to come. We are just beginning the conversation here on what if tomorrow, what if we knew there was no tomorrow? How does that change our life? I want to get into it when we come back, and we'll take some input from our Zoom guests. But I really want to get into it. How should we act with others when we get that frustration, when they aren't acting that way? What are we supposed to do? How are we supposed to act when we're in that frustrating situation like I was in this week a couple of times that forced me to think about this? We'll come back with that and much more on today's show. This is Stress Free Living. Please stay with us. Okay, we have 90 seconds here. If anybody would like to open their mic and briefly share a thought or a question, we welcome that.
Well, this is Doug. And you guys, you always bring up all these thoughts in my mind, but what you said was, planning. You do some planning ahead for things, think about, well, what happens, and I've done that quite a bit, by the way. We have a lot of stuff to do around here, and it was just a few months ago. I thought, I better write down all of the little things that I do around here for if something happens to me, for my wife Patricia, just so she'll know. I was shocked at all the little things that I wrote down, 2 pages of stuff, and I showed it to her. She handed it back. She wasn't too impressed. But anyway, the point is, you do think about what you're talking about, but more in the future than just one day. I don't think I've really ever thought about just what if today is the last day or there is no tomorrow or whatever. So this is very interesting.
Thank you, Dan. Anybody else? We have a little more time if anyone's got a thought or a question that you want me to ask. Welcome, Jugesh.
I was just going to quickly say, I think it's such a wonderful topic.
Yeah, welcome.
Okay, thank you.
I was just going to say, it's such a wonderful topic. Like for me, that was top of mind, like even when my kids were born, and has had a huge impact on how, I've decided to raise them or educate them, and how, because if tomorrow is not there, you live your life very differently. And I think having that question at the forefront of what we do on a daily basis really makes or breaks, how you live your life.
Good. Thank you. We are back on Stress Free Living. Ray Samich and Ratanjit and Ray with you again today, talking about an interesting topic. What if we knew there was no tomorrow? And we interacted with some of our guests here, our Zoom guests, which again, we encourage you and invite you to be a part of that, or also to check out all of our shows on our YouTube channel, Stress Free Living Radio. Ratanjit, this is empowering. That's a thought that we just heard from a couple of our Zoom guests. To actually, it's difficult. It's challenging in some ways because nobody wants to accept the reality that we're not going to be here. Nobody really wants to, it's a little shudder that comes through us for a moment when we say, gee, we are going to die. But that is the reality. We've talked about that forever in terms of our human experience. It will end. There's nobody that didn't end for. So since it is inevitable, we might as well accept it, and we might as well, in some ways, prepare for it. And if we're more prepared because we're thinking one day at a time, or 1 hour at a time, or even one breath at a time, it absolutely shapes what we will do with that last day, last hour, last breath. Do you think for some people, you say we give up our selfishness, okay, we become unselfish. Do you think for some people, the habits that they've lived in, the life they've lived in, it has the opposite reaction. Do you think that there's a group of people that would say, I'm going to become insanely selfish on this last day on earth because that's all I've got? This is it. I'm going to do everything that I ever wanted to do in this one day because I'm going to go out with, great, what they think would be bringing great happiness.
Absolutely. If you are obsessed with mine, this is mine, you have a very strong habit of this is my family, this is my wealth, this is my thing. You're going to call your family and tell them how to plan things, how to take care of things, rather than realizing the end of your life and understanding that what means to you most is being selfish. There is another side of it. Once you realize that if your mind conceives this idea of there is no tomorrow, this mind conceived this idea of the example of this greedy doctor who was inventing a cure, and now she has only one last day doctor have given her, and she's want to share this information instead of worrying about the Nobel Prize. So once that mindset is coming in you, that today is my last day, and somehow I want to make a difference. Whatever I have, I'm being holding myself. So once you acquire this wisdom of this last day, and you want to live your life with this wisdom, throughout your life, you want to live as today is my last day, then you have to kill yourself while you are alive. There are two sides of us, as we talked about. We are sent in this universe, this world, by divine power, and we are given this housing as the human body. We are neither young or old or white or black or male or female. These are all properties associated with the human body, not us. So once you realize that if your mind, which is intellectual mind, is operated by this spacesuit, this human body always is parked in fear, greed, and ego. So brain always is going to contaminate it. Whatever brain is thinking or doing is contaminated by fear, greed, and ego, if this brain is run by this human body mode. So what else is there? We are this human body. When we die, is all there. All the limbs and everything is there. What is missing? The enlivening force which gives us life is missing. So we are really the enlivening force. Enlivening force within us is free of fear, greed, and ego. If your mind is run by this enlivening force, all your decisions are going to be free of fear, greed, and ego. So when I say kill yourself while alive, means switch your mind being operated by this divine force rather than this human body. So there is no tomorrow. In that tomorrow, glory happens, happiness happens, everything happens if you are not alive. means if your brain is not run by the human body more, right?
It's when you share that story, and you have many times when you share that explanation, when we sit and we think for a show like this, you're right. Okay, we know that all of the evidence really shows that there is something that empowers us, and that whatever that is going to be there afterwards. There has to be a separation. There has to be something that creates life, and there has to be then something that is there afterwards. But on a day-to-day basis, on that minute by minute, breath to breath instance, it's very easy not to think about that. I mean, our pleasures, our joys of life are associated with the human body. The things that we think of, when we do think of the inevitability of death, we think about our body won't be here to hug others. We won't have the ability to see things the way we see them now. Now, again, a little sidebar. I watched a video the other day that was just so incredible, because it talked about the fact that we think of the color spectrum as a human being of being amazing, that we can see all these different shades of all the different colors. And yet we know physically, scientifically, our ability to see colors is only as good as our human eyes. So the reality is the world probably has millions of more colors in it than we're seeing with our human eyes, and millions of additional sounds that we are not hearing with the capability of our human ears. So when you think of it in that perspective and you say, wow, when I'm not in my body anymore, the world is going to be so much better. I'm going to be able to see so much more and hear so much more and understand so much more. And as you alluded to, it's not going to be tainted by ego and fear and greed. It might be truly heaven. Hey, that's a good way of looking at it. It might purely be perfect. Okay. But that thought isn't there every day. That thought isn't there every moment. We're making decisions based on what our human body feels and what our human body wants to feel and how we want to act. And we're influenced by how others make us feel within our human body. I hope I'm being clear to you. You're right with what you just said, but that's so hard to hold on to on a moment by moment basis, isn't it?
Basically, the truth is this, that we have developed certain habits, and we read books, we attend lectures, we attend shows like this, and they make sense to us. We use that knowledge and file it. We talk about it with other friends, and many times if this knowledge is really impressive and you study more, you become expert at this knowledge, you lecture about it, you write books about it, but you never really practice that knowledge. You always live your habits. So yes, we make sense, and we keep on repeating this, and our listener must be saying, gosh, I've listened to it many times, but it's hard to live by this. What is he talking about? So ultimately, we are basically living our habits, not the knowledge. The good example is, as I have given, that doctors, professional physicians, they know how to be healthy because they treat us. But they live their habits of eating bad food and living and sin, and they end up having a shorter lifespan than an average Americans. So basically, they are habitual by living there. In our brain, as I talked about, there is this part is called basal ganglia, and it's given as a gift to us. And anything you repeat many times simultaneously to make us more efficient, it forms a habit. So then habits are those which we practice without thinking. So our critical thinking is not at work when we live by our habits. That's why many smart people do many stupid things, because they are living by habits, not by knowledge. So this knowledge of who we are, not our human body, it will remain as a talking point until we cultivate this into a habit. Right?
You're absolutely right, as always. I want to, in case some of our listeners weren't here for last week's show, you also added another element to the habits that I thought was so powerful. And I don't know if I realized it until later in the week when I was thinking about it further, is we take those habits and those habits become our personality. So the one that was so powerful, the example you gave, is that if you have a habit of worrying, then we become, by personality, a worrier. And so now, when that person worries about everything to the point of being, a little bit, off the wall in terms of like, well, you're a worrier, you worry about everything, and everybody knows that, and they identify that person as their personality of being a worrier, then it almost becomes a justification for that person. Okay, well, I'm just a worrier. Okay, they don't try to improve it. They don't try to change it because that's who they are. That's their personality. I'm a worrier. Okay, the problem with that whole situation is that that was founded on being a habit of worrying, and we can change habits. All right. We don't have to, the habits are not us. They're a choice that we've made. So if we are a worrier or any other type of thing that people identify us as, we're a prognosticator. We put everything off. We look at everything too deeply. We look at everything. We don't look at everything. We're too impulsive. Whatever those things are that have become our personality, they very likely are just habits that we have gotten into that has formed our personality. That is such an incredibly empowering thing to understand, that we can change that. And so now you're taking this to the real core habit of understanding who we really are. And is our first habit to think of us as a human being? Yes, it is. Or is our first habit to think of us as a spiritual being having a human experience?
Yeah. Basically, why we pick certain habits. The two twins, they live under the same atmosphere. They are born by the same parents, and they're identical condition, but their habit forming is going to be different.
Right.
Why? We say, okay, that's their character. Your core character, which is going to dictate the habits you pick, is formed before the age of 6. So somehow the core habits, core character, basically is embedded in fear, greed, and ego. Some have higher content of ego, some have higher content of greed, some have higher content of fear. So these habits are going to be controlled or picked up by whichever is controlling factor in your life when you were 6 and you picked these habits, these core character. So that formulates your habits, formulate your personality, and character formulates your habits, right?
I took you too far away from the original topic with my little sidebar there, but we want to come back and talk more about the formation of our habits and why and how. We're going to get more into that in a different show. I want to concentrate back on what you just said in terms of the habit of looking at us as as divine beings having a human experience. But I guess I look at the clock here on the wall and I see it is time for us to take a break. We're going to come back. We're going to talk much further about living our life. And I still want to touch base, as I promised before, on how we are supposed to respond when others aren't living their life as if there is no tomorrow. How do we handle our human control when we are frustrated by things that happen in the moment or by how other people are acting in the moment? We're trying to reduce your stress on Stress-Free Living. We'll be right back. Okay, time for quick 90 seconds of thoughts. If anybody has a thought or question to share.
Good morning, Kim. I just feel like being present is a gift, not only to ourselves, but to others. And when we are caught up in all these other things, it just lets us know how we are not present and we are not appreciating the moment. And when we are, then we're more conscious of sharing, like you said, capturing the experiences and preparing to hand it off, to people that we care about.
Yeah, living in the present is really a habit. So it gives you focus, it gives you concentration, you are always there with the project fully, 100%, if you begin to live in the present. And your outcome...
Really, well, we will get to your answer on that. Any other quick thought from any of our other guests? We have about 30 seconds left if anybody else wants to share. Rakesh, we're not hearing you.
You have to unmute.
Okay, sorry. Just quickly, I just wanted to say that, I like to focus more on enduring human qualities rather than what I have to give to the world, because that never changes the world in a most profound ways. It's the human relationships that makes the world a better place. Like kindness, honesty, helping others, those kinds of things. Not necessarily making a big discovery, that has never changed the world or the course of the world in a manner that makes people happier or more fulfilled. It's the enduring human qualities. That's what we should be focusing on.
Very good. Thank you.
We are back on Stress-Free Living with Ratanjit and yours truly, Ray Samich. Thank you so much for being with us here today. Always enjoy our interaction with our fabulous Zoom guests. And if you'd like to be part of that, please let us know. We'd love to invite you and be part of this with us. Ratanjit, just a few minutes left and so many thoughts. When we talk about the habit of understanding that we are a spiritual person having a human experience, that is pretty deep thought and a habit to gather. We all should strive to have it. But one of our guests came up with a line that simply said, realizing living in the moment is the ultimate gift. It seems to me that that's another way of saying the same thing. It's another way of saying that we are a spiritual being having a human experience if we can live in that moment, right? Is that kind of where the two thoughts cross and they perhaps intersect? That if we can live in every moment, we are doing it as both a human experience and a spiritual experience?
If you are a Catholic, right? And supposing you meet Pope, at that point, your attention span remains on each word uttered by Pope.
True.
So you automatically convert yourself into the present moment. So what happens is when you are aware of this fact that every human being who you are come across, every living being you come across, basically they are enlivened by the divine force. So your so-called God is present in every human being. So how can you not have full attention in presence of God, in presence of the divine power? So it is our unawareness and our labeling a good person. This is my friend, this is my son, this is my daughter, this is black, this is white, this is male, or this is female, this is younger, older, and we classify those things. So those are basically the qualification of the human body. What enlivens each of them is the divine force. If you are focusing on the divine force, you are obviously kindness, honesty, your selflessness, doing something for that person is automatically going to come out of you because you are in presence of the highest power of this earth or this universe in front of you. So this unawareness and labeling of we basically consider everybody as a spacesuit, the human body, not the force which enlivens the human body. So once you begin to see that force in you, you begin to see that force in others. That is why to live today, to live in the present, you have to recognize that force which enlivens you within you and everyone else.
All right. So I tried to give you a moment ago, I tried to say it was a shortcut just to say to live in the moment. I suggested that as a habit that would connect to the divine reality. I think what I've heard you say is that there's value in living in the moment. There's certainly that's a habit that we should have, but it's not enough. If unless we have that additional awareness that in that moment I am a spiritual being having a human experience, and that so is everybody else. And so when I'm interacting with the world, I am interacting with everybody else that is a divine being, okay, that's a spiritual being having a human experience. Unless I can take it to that level, I'm really not where I need to be. Is that okay? Absolutely. All right. So there is no shortcut. I tried to give us a shortcut, but it doesn't work. Although living in the moment is a good habit to have, but it's not deep, it's not far enough.
Yeah, you cannot develop that habit until there is a reason to develop that habit.
All right. There you go. There's your why. Okay. Another one of our guests here, because we only have a few minutes. When you were giving examples and I was giving examples of what's important to us at the end, and we talked about sharing secrets or sharing like life-changing capabilities, like curing cancer. We talked about those kind of examples. One of our Zoom guests said, what about the really important things? I mean, it sounds like curing cancer is critically important. It's going to save lives. But what about the really important things that we learn in our life? The wisdom that comes through life, perhaps the wisdom that comes from the habit of knowing that we are a spiritual being having a human experience. aren't those the things that we are supposed to share on our deathbed, and meaning that we're supposed to share in every last breath we take?
Again, it is once you are parked in ego mode, judgment is natural. You are going to always judge others because you want to be superior to them. You want to be better to them. So you're going to find one reason, whether they're more wiser, they have more degrees, they have more wealth, they have more better health, or whatever. You find a situation where you are better than them. So that is how you are judging other person. So kindness, being genuine, being compassionate, being loving, all that basically cannot come when you do not see the divine power enlivening the other party. So that automatically flows out of you. Otherwise, you are going to be kind, and you are going to tell the story to everyone that I was kind to this person because of your ego. So yes, we are kind to nurture our ego. We are compassionate to nurture our ego. And we talk about it. Basically, we have not become kind. We have not become compassionate, because those are the quality of the divine power within us. Until we become that, those qualities will not ever enter us without any condition of ego, fear, or greed. Right?
It does sound a little harsh if you just take the words that you just spoke on the surface, that we're being kind, but are we really being kind because we want to show kindness, or because we feel good about ourselves when we show kindness? That stark reality of that hurts a little bit, I think, for most of us, because if we really think realistically, honestly about some of those situations, we have to admit that we were kind of, it was a two-way win. It was a win-win for us because we were being kind, and somebody they felt the kindness, but they also said, boy, you're a nice person because you were kind, and that made my ego go up. And so you kind of had strings attached to that kindness. You kind of, it wasn't, as you made the distinction, you didn't become kindness, you were just acting kind.
Yes.
We do a lot of acting kind in our life.
Yeah, we should always happen, because we are controlled by these three things: fear, greed, and ego. That is, because our brain is guided by the human body. Human body knows it is going to die. It is going to, so it is lives in fear to protect itself. It thinks it is separate than others. It is going to live in ego. So those are nothing wrong with that. That is how nature has designed the human body. So for us to protect this human body, I have to live in fear, because unknown can hurt me.
So we have 1 minute left. I keep asking the question. I keep saying I want to ask a question, and I don't. So let's say that I've accomplished this. Let's say that I'm living in the moment, and I'm living with this understanding of who I am, who I really am. How do I handle the world around me that doesn't get that? How do I handle those frustrations of the people that are living clearly in fear, ego, and greed, and they're making decisions that just defy the wisdom of the universe? How do I cope with that?
Basically, you begin to behave kinder and nurture. Always park yourself in the adding highest value mode. So your values goes up. You can live with people who are infected by ego or greed and don't worry about correcting themselves. Correct yourself, and they will change their behavior towards you. You control them by controlling your behavior. You control their reaction by controlling your behavior.
Starts with me. Starts with us.
Yes.
All right. All right. Ratanjit, thank you, as always, for sharing so many wonderful thoughts, making us think about something that we don't normally want to think about or take the time to think about. You've given us some wonderful thoughts to think about this week. Thank you, as always. Thank you to all of our Zoom guests and our listeners and viewers, wherever you may be. Remember, we're all playing the same game. Have a great day, and we'll talk to you again real soon.
Breaking news this hour.
We are clear.
We are playing the same game of ego, fear, and greed.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. I should amend that in the future, huh? All right, everybody that's with us, we are delighted that we've got them all of you with us. So if you have a comment now to share or a thought, question for Ratanjit, we have no time limits. Love to hear from you. Just open up your microphone.
Can I say something here? Good evening.
How are you?
For US. Fine, pretty good.
You're cutting off.
Living in the present is no doubt.
Jagesh, I'm really sorry, Jagesh, but we're not able to hear you. There's a really bad connection. I apologize to you, but we're not able to hear you. I don't know how to connect it. If you want to try to come back in, come out, I'll let you back in, or if you want to put it into a chat. Okay. Thank you. Anybody else while we're waiting for Jagesh to rejoin us?
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm sorry.
Well, what to say about today? It's kind of interesting that I haven't thought. And as the show went on, I kept thinking, I don't want to think about that this is my last breath, or this is my last day, or this is my last thing. I just want to still plan on tomorrow, and I still want to plan on doing these things. So it's an interesting thought, and it's like, yikes, I don't know. So maybe that would you would say, well, that's my ego or whatever. I'm just thinking about myself here. I probably am, but it just kind of put a whole new thought in my mind. That's for sure.
Yeah, you're living by your habits cultivated by your ego, fear, and greed.
Yeah. But it is a human tendency. I admit it too. It sends a shiver up through me when I think about the reality of not being here tomorrow. If we're in the human mode, it's a very understandable feeling.
Hi, Ray. Ray, can you hear me? This is Sudeep.
Sudeep, yes, we can. We can hear you.
Yeah, I had to dial back in through the phone because I guess my computer, for some reason, you couldn't hear me. I just have a quick comment. I think I completely agree that, living in the moment, living for the day, living for the breath, the next breath, or the current breath, is the right way, is the right lens to look and define your actions and how we behave and how we do things in our lives. But I also think that to a certain degree, we are conditioned to plan for the future, the next 10 breaths or the next 10 years or whatever it is, because, when you are working somewhere as a professional, you live for today, but then you are planning ahead. If you are, starting a family, you're thinking of today, but really you're thinking of the future, right? So in some ways, I feel also that, you have to find some kind of a balance where, living for the day is is important. It gives you the right perspective. But I'm not sure that you can completely give up living for the future in the sense of planning for the future. I don't know.
Your future is a byproduct of what you do today.
Okay, yes, I agree.
You plan for future as the divine force is going to live forever. So your future planning always is going to be based on adding highest value. Today, your future planning is all based on fear, greed, and ego. So your future planning would change because you will act in today's mode. By action of today, automatically your tomorrow would be planned.
Okay.
So you don't plan tomorrow without taking an action today, right? You take some action today, which automatically ends up planning for tomorrow.
When you had your business, though, Ratanjit, didn't you have a 3-year plan, a 5-year plan, or didn't you have a goal to say that you wanted, you want the year-end statements to look a certain way, you want to have more production or more productivity? I mean, you were always looking at the future, were you not?
It's very interesting. When a small kid, you are the uncle, so you see the small kid and you take a present for the small kid. And small kid has expectation from you to have this toy. He's not very happy from the gift you took for him because that is much expensive and much better and more involving than the things which the kids were looking. So when we plan only what we can conceive. The nature has a bigger thing ready for us if we only focus on adding the highest value.
I want to retell that story a little bit because I maybe everyone didn't catch it, and if they did, I'm sorry for the redundancy. But if I'm a little kid and I'm looking for this toy, and it's really only a $5, very simple little plastic horse, but I'm expecting that. My uncle brings me a $100, computer that has so much more value and it's worth so much more and it can do so many more things. But I'm still looking for this little $5 plastic horse, and I'm disappointed because that's what I wanted and he didn't give me that. And so I'm all frustrated and bummed out and almost angry that I didn't get this, not realizing the value and the capabilities of this $100 gift that my uncle gave me. So then you put that in the perspective of saying, because our expectations were on something else, we didn't realize what we could have had or what was available to me in the bigger world. We're limiting ourselves with our expectations.
That's exactly what we do.
Okay. Yeah.
We achieve what we plan many times, but then what we get, we never are satisfied because that's far less than what we could have achieved.
But then doesn't that also drive, innovation, drive, the growth? I'm not talking just in material terms.
It looks like that. If you look today, with all the innovation, all the things which are available to us, are we happier than before? Not really.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
So there is something missing here. So this is all as a consequence of planning. If we only focus on becoming a value-adding entity, not by adding highest value, when we add the highest value, many times our ego is in control. When we become a highest value-adding entity, then it is our basic nature of adding the highest value. And no matter what I do, whether I make a cup of tea for my spouse, or whether I drive my car, or whether I dress myself, or whether I eat in a restaurant, always think of becoming a highest value adding entity. So as a consequence of that attitude, I'm planning my future, because as a result of adding the highest value, I'm constantly in a mode to remain in a student mode, because the highest value I'd added yesterday is no longer is going to be highest value. I have to improve. I have to better it. My competition becomes my last best. My competition is not the world. And as a consequence of that thinking, I always excel than other people around me. I always achieve better than what they ever anticipated, whether they ever planned. So this concept, when you think about it, it opens totally new doors which you never really ever imagined they were open for you.
I laugh also because I'm thinking about sometimes we've set goals at work in different businesses I've been involved with. You never know where to set those goals. So you set them at a certain amount. Sometimes they're too easily achieved. So the people just kind of are going through the motions and they still hit the goals. Other times you place goals that are too high, and the human nature of the people is that we're never going to hit that anyway, so don't even try. Ray's being crazy when he sets that goal. I'm thinking now to your logic of saying, if you are adding the highest value every single day, if you are trying to be better than your
every single moment,
okay, trying to make your best better every single moment, you're going to blow any goals that you possibly thought of out of the water.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Because you're doing the best every single moment of every single day that you're living. So it is so much. I mean, it doesn't seem like it makes sense, but if you really think it through, it makes the most sense of all.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a quick question. So like, what if you're, in an organization where you have these beliefs, but maybe your co-founder or your partner is not of the same mentality and keep setting these high goals and these high achievements that we have to, kind of hit? Do you just keep in your lane and keep with your philosophy and keep with your moment to moment, concept of adding higher value? Or do you discuss these concepts with your co-founder? Like, what happens when you're not necessarily on the same mindset in terms of value adding with the people that you work with?
So if your organization set up a goal and you far exceeded that, would that organization would be happy or unhappy?
They would be happy. They are happy, yeah.
So to far exceed those goals, the only way is to act from moment to moment to add the highest value.
So I think you're right. So I think my question is more, if the rest of the organization is setting these goals, I think what happens, at least to me personally, is fear starts to come into me, because I feel like, oh my God, I have to achieve these goals, instead of just focusing on, not instead of, but whereas I'm just kind of focusing on adding my own value and doing the best that I can, there's this kind of fear that creeps in when these goals and achievements are set. And I personally have a hard time kind of balancing my own, I guess, anxiety then when it comes to operating at different mindsets, if that makes sense.
Yeah, your habits are scaring you to, whether I achieve it or no, whether this will happen or no. instead of focusing on adding the highest value in everything you do.
Mm.
Cultivate a habit of continuously adding the highest value in every moment, everything you do, not just the work at home, with your children, with your family, with your society, with yourself. So basically, we consider I can take liberty with me. This is me. But actually, that body is gifted to you. You must respect that. You must protect it. You must serve it. So, as a consequence, you are in a serving mode all the time, whether you are feeding this body or you are taking care of this body, you are taking care of your children or your family or society. There are no strangers anymore, because you see everyone as the reflection of the divine force in them.
Mm. So I have another question on that. So, I mean, that's something that resonates very deeply with me, right? Is seeing the divine in everyone that we interact with. And for me, it's very easy to do that with, people that I'm not necessarily very intimately close with, right? So like when you don't see someone so often, or they're clients of yours, or you don't interact with them too easily, it's easy to see the positive and beauty in everybody. But I do struggle sometimes with the people that are, most intimate with me, and who, you are so close with, or you work so closely with, or you live so closely with. It's often easier, or it's often easier to get frustrated in those moments with the people that are very close to you, and you trigger them and they trigger you. How do you remind yourself to see that divinity in the people that are closest to you and tend to trigger you the most?
When you see a person, the habit they exhibit, basically that's what you see. You don't see the divine force in them.
Mm.
You judge them by the habit they would exhibit, because that's always what you have found in them. But if you meet a stranger and you are very kind and very courteous, how would they react to you? They would be automatically very kind and courteous. Similarly, your family, you are loving and you are caring instead of judging. You are basically, when they do certain things, you see the consequence of what they are doing, and you want to stop them. No, change that. Otherwise, this is going to happen. Basically, instead of serving them, instead of adding value to them, we begin to judge them. So judging has to come out of it. You begin to see the divine force in them. You respect them. You bow to them. You have compassion for them, and ultimately things will change.
Thank you.
I want to add, and this is purely from Ratanjit, but it's something that he has shared sometimes, and I'm not sure, Rekha, if you've heard that yet. He says that you cannot have a friend, you can only be a friend. And we think of our children as...
You cannot have a family, you can be a family.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
You cannot have a son or daughter. You can only be a mother or father.
Right. Okay, yes. Or you cannot have a spouse, you can only be a spouse. Okay. And that is such a little difference, but it's an enormous difference at the same time, right? Because we think of our family now as our possessions, and we think of our family now, if there are possessions, we can change them. We can do things that will affect them, and they can then act a certain way because they're ours. It's like our car. We can do what we want with our car because it's our car. So we should be able to do what we want with our kids because they're our kids. It doesn't work that way. all we can be is the best father or mother or spouse. And that's pure Ratanjit that is coming through me now, but it's something that he's helped me to really learn. And it's a big difference.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I have a quick question for you. So you're living in the moment. You are trying to maximize the value that you create or you contribute to the moment. Is there a place in this, way of looking and thinking of doing, retrospectives? In other words, I did what I thought was the right thing today to maximize the value. But then 2 days later or 2 weeks later, I look back and I say, oh, I did that day. Maybe, that was perhaps there was a better way of doing something or some other course of action I should have taken. Is there some kind of a feedback loop that you have in this way of thinking or looking?
You are constantly on the path of making your best better. If you have not improved, you are constantly thinking, how can I do better? How can I make it better? So anything you have done, you are going to do better than that.
So you do go back and
Yes.
you ways to be better than what you were, the last second of the last day.
You have to ask yourself, how can I improve? How can I do better?
Sudeep, it actually sounds like if you're actually making progress, if you do look back, if you say what I did a week ago, boy, I would do that differently today, that means you've progressed, because at the time you were doing what you thought was your very best, but now you've progressed where now you realize you can do better. So next time you're going to do it even better. So it actually is logical with this, that we almost always should look at what we did the day before, and today we'd say, I would be better. I would do it better today. If we're really living, adding the highest value every day, because we should grow every day. We should learn something every day that helps us to do it better than we did the day before.
Yep, agree. Okay, thank you.
It sounds like the highest expression of love and vulnerability. Being willing.
We're putting ourselves out there every day.
Yeah.
We really are, and we're subjecting ourselves to our own criticism an hour later. So our ego disappears in search of being better. Yeah. Anybody else have any thought? It's wonderful.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me, please?
Yeah. You're better. You're better, Jogesh.
Okay, I'll switch off my video. So the connectivity is poor in Delhi today. You see the G20 summit is here, and your president is here in New Delhi. So maybe there are some glitches in the communication. Anyway, my question is to live in the present and keep looking for a future goal. Is that the way to live life, or let it go on a free ride? In life, you live in present and take the things as they come, do the best value of doing things, and don't worry about the future. Or have a set goal and then pursue that future. There's always a dilemma in what way of living one should be.
So once you become highest value adding entity, you are constantly thinking, how can I add highest value in this situation? And for that, you have to become a true student. The difference between a true student and a conventional student is conventional student wants to be better than other. The true student wants to be better than themselves. And conventional student is proud of their achievement. The true student is grateful for their achievement. Conventional student is parked in ego, greed, and greed. And true students, they every action they see divine force and they serve the divine force. And true students never get lost in I, me, and mine. They basically see the divine force even in themselves, in any others. So setting goals limits you. Whereas when you are making your last better than what you have done, you are constantly improving your best into better, your goals automatically are going to be better than what you have set.
I see. So one need not worry about setting a long-range goal or a better goal right now.
Yeah, your immediate goal is to better your best. The only goal you have in life is to make your best better.
I think the problem when we hear this, Ratanjit, and it's been, coming out of several of us here today, is that we are taught so much in our human world under traditional education means that if you don't set goals, if you don't make plans, then you're going to fail. And in our human mode, we are so prone to laziness. So unless you are looking forward, unless you are setting goals, then you will just be content with what you have, and it's never enough.
You're setting goals. You're setting goals to be better than your last best.
Right. It's a whole. It's not in terms of a future 5-year plan where I want to be. It's in terms of just in this moment making myself better.
Yeah.
So it's like just be in the moment and Lord, universal wisdom. Maybe that's the way to live.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yeah, it is so different than what we've been taught, than what we've been indoctrinated. Not just taught, but indoctrinated. I mean, every success book is about setting goals and making plans. I mean, that's at the core pretty much of every story of every successful person. But you're right how limiting it is ultimately, because we can't even imagine how good we can be if we did this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else? Rakesh, may I say a few words?
Yes, please.
So, I'm listening to all of this carefully, and I'm just wondering, we need to look at what success is. What is a successful life? How it should be defined? And I think that's where we get tripped up. There is, for example, there is no limit to fame, wealth, stuff like that, material stuff. There is no limit to it, and after a certain point, all of these things lose value. And that's why I was trying to say earlier, it's the enduring human values. That's what really people should be thinking about. For example, if somebody was planning to, rob a bank tomorrow, and he just learned that I'm going to die tomorrow, the chances are that he's going to abandon that idea. Okay? If somebody was planning to murder somebody tomorrow, and he or she just learned that I'm going to actually die tomorrow night, he's going to think about that twice, or maybe not. But I think that's where the core of this thought process should go. It's not about, oh, what's going to happen to my son and what's going to happen. We are delusional about that. We don't have any control about that in reality. And we can plan. I'm not saying we should not plan. We should, of course. We have some worldly duties. But if it's a matter of what if there's no tomorrow, it really comes down to what are the enduring human values. And that's really, and once again, I always go back to this Eastern philosophies where they just talk about, it's the karma that actually, makes the entire thing for all of us. what happens to us here, what happens to us when we leave this earth. And that's where the what if there is no tomorrow hits at, really. We're not here tomorrow, so what will happen to us? And I think it's all based on what we do on this earth, not in terms of material stuff, but in terms of how good we are to each other. Are we kind? Are we honest, decent? Those kinds of things. I'll shut up now.
If your habit is part in ego, greed, and so if you are going to know that you are going to die tomorrow, and you wanted to kill somebody tomorrow, and the revenge is going to waste the today in killing that person, you still want to kill him.
Yeah, I think it could go either way, in my opinion.
Depends
You're right. It's not going to be 100%. Yeah.
It depends on where you're parked, what is guiding you.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Where you're parked is a good way of putting it.
Right.
Yeah. Your perspective from where you're parked.
Yeah.
Rakesh, though, you did indirectly, you changed the focus. We approach this today from how would you act today if you knew there was no tomorrow? You bring up the concept of if you're thinking about where you'll be tomorrow, if you knew there was no tomorrow, how would that affect you? Okay. That changes. I mean, it probably shouldn't change it, but in many people's minds, for example, if it was the person who said, I'm going to take my last day then and party all day, if all I'm going to do is party all day, if I was thinking of that relative to today, that might be my action. If I'm thinking about that relative to where that's going to put me tomorrow, I think that will be a whole different answer.
Right. And I take this question in that vein, actually, because we're talking about tomorrow. We're not talking about today. We didn't say, what if there was no today? We didn't say that. That's not the question here.
Yeah. But I was looking at it in terms of how would I live today. You're looking at of how would that might affect my tomorrow. So how would that affect how I act today? You know what I'm saying? It's
yeah, I do.
But it does, it's the different perspective. One obviously is a spiritual perspective. I was approaching this more of a human perspective from today.
Sure.
Yeah. All right. Go ahead. Ratanjit, something else?
I was going to make a comment on happiness.
Go ahead.
Our happiness is, Indian philosophy says contentment, it is independent of worldly things and all that. So we are placed in this human body which still feels heat and cold and all these things. And so you have to have, when you do a meditation, when you are praying, or you have to be in an environment which is free of extra heat so you can draw the attention. So you have to provide the comfort to the human body. If you are hungry and you cannot pray, so you have to have food. And who grows food? So it has to be ultimately adding the highest value, which is going to bring you the happiness.
I'm not sure I got the point of that. And I know there was a very important point there, and I'm not really sure if I got it.
The point is that instead of, in Indian philosophy, you become sadhu, leave everything and go to Himalayas and do your meditation and all that. So you do your meditation while you are involved in the worldly things. So your mind is constantly grateful to the divine force present everywhere, around you, within you, and then you serve that force. And serving uniqueness which you have, skills you have, the resources you have, which you utilize to serve that divine force around you. So by adding the highest value through whatever is capabilities you have gained, whatever resources you have, so continuously make this place a better place than what you have come up.
When I do that meditation, though, that's my escape from the world.
Yes.
Okay, that allows me to cope, because I go into a different place than the world that sometimes is crazy and downright insane. So I escape to my oasis for a moment of, inner peace.
No,
Okay.
fundamental is against the fundamental. When a person who gives up everything and become a sadhu, how can you give up something which you don't begin to own? If I go to your home and start giving the things which are yours to others, I'm giving. Would that be called giving?
Slap you.
Yeah, similarly, I don't own anything. It is impossible to own anything in this human life. So everything is gifted to you. How can you give up? That whole thing is completely out of contest.
I agree. This is something I was trying to allude to earlier when I said that we are delusional about our planning. And so we feel that we have so much control over what will happen to our children and stuff like that. We really don't.
You don't.
Right.
So only thing is in your control is to add value.
Right, exactly. And so interpersonal values, provide love to your children, be nice to your neighbor, be nice to your friends, be respectful, be kind. That's what I would focus on more if there were no tomorrow.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you very much for joining.
Yes. And thank you for sticking around with us here. This was one of the longer post-show segments we've had, and it's all because of your valuable input. So thank you so much for being with us, everybody.